Hi everyone, and welcome to week 2 of our summer series here at Agape. My name is Lacey, and I am one of the leaders here, and I am super excited to be going through the second half of Philippians 1. Last week, Jordan really emphasizes love and how much love Christ has for us, and also how he calls us to love others and to love him fully. We see this love throughout Paul's life, and there's a lot of hardships that Paul went through that we will see throughout this book. And yet at the end of the day, he understood how much Christ loved him and how that love needed to be shared to all. The verses that I want to talk about today are verses 20 through 21. He says that it is my eager expectation and hope that I will not be at all ashamed, but with the full courage now as always, Christ will be honored in my body, whether by life or by death. For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. There are two different reasons why Paul says to die is gain. First, he knew that because of his life, because of the choices and the actions that he had, that Christ will be honored through his death. Paul went through so much suffering and persecution for Christ, and so he knew that by his death, by all the actions that he had to bring him to this point of death, that Christ would be honored in him. He also, the second part of it is his physical death. Like obviously he went through a lot of suffering, and so he knew that when he physically would die, that he would finally get to be with Jesus in heaven and have this healing over his body and finally be at peace. Most of us will not experience the persecution that Paul went through, but we can all agree that there still is suffering, and there's still so much hardships. If we learned anything this past year, is that suffering is real and that there's so much hurt that can happen. And yet, what is our role? What is, as believers, as Christians, what is our job, and how do we make this go forward? And so Paul understood that because of his life, because of his actions, because of choosing Jesus daily and loving his people, that his death would be honored, and that when he was face to face with Jesus, he would be pleased and happy with the way that Paul did his life and the actions that he had. So if we look at Paul's life, we see that our job is to not only love others and love God, but also by our actions of how do we honor Christ through all that we do? How do we honor him through the little things in life and the big things? And I think if anything, we can look at this and see that Paul understood that no matter what he did in his life, that his actions need to follow Christ, and his actions need to be centered around who God is and what he says we need to do in order to love his people and love him. So my encouragement for you guys this week is, how can you live your life for Christ in the daily, in the small, in the big? What does it look like to honor God with your actions? I think we can look and hear this and think there's big things that we can do, and yet I think honoring God, there's so many little things that we can do, whether it's letting someone pull in front of you in traffic, or not snapping at your friends, or I don't know, there's so many things, even inside of our hearts as well. There's a lot. I always try and do heart checks with myself of, did I respond nicely? Am I thinking nice things? Am I honoring people? Am I honoring God by my actions, by my thoughts, by my feelings, all of that? And so my encouragement for you is that you go into this week to be mindful of you and be mindful of your thoughts and your hearts, and what can it look like for you this week to honor God with what you do, and honor God with your hearts and your minds, and to just emphasize that love aspect. There is so much love that we all have inside of our hearts, and the biggest thing that we can do of showing Christ is by loving others and loving him. And so my prayer for you as you go into this week is that you can be aware of your actions and be aware of how you can represent Christ this week.